Welcome to the Help for Leaders podcast. I'm Stacey Harris, and I'm passionate about showing leaders the power of communication and how it can transform their organizations, from Fortune 500 boardrooms all the way to brand new startups. As a leader, your actions and your words transform people and your company culture. So join me as I share tips and insights for elevating your leadership abilities as well as your team's performance. Let's dive right in. Hi, y'all. Welcome back to the Help for Leaders podcast. I'm Stacey Harris, and today we're going to be talking about extroverts, introverts, and have you ever heard of the term ambivert? We're going to see how well you know yourself. If you've been listening to any of my other episodes, you know I talk a lot about human behavior and I talk a lot about DISC. You may not know your DISC style, but most likely you know whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, or maybe somewhere in between. So I want to talk a little bit about our tendencies and even how DISC relates to introversion and extroversion, and even give you some questions to figure out if you are an ambivert, okay? So let's talk about extroversion first. Extroversion is when you gain energy from other people. Are you all about being with others and that literally fills your cup and you're just so excited and you gain energy by being with other people? That's extroversion. If you're someone who thrives in social environments and you love to be around people, that is what an extrovert loves to do. Okay? If you're an introvert, not so much. It depletes you. But for an extrovert, thriving with lots of individuals, lots of contactability, lots of interaction, that's how you recharge. That's extroversion, okay? So typically, you have some pretty well-developed even public speaking, engagement, those kinds of things. So let's talk about through the lens of DISC. If you are someone who is more in the dominant or influence, high D, high I, those two aspects, you're most likely an extrovert. So for a high I individual, that influence or outgoing person, you thrive with people. It's all about people. Where if you're someone who is the dominant individual or someone who's very driving, you're all about leading others. And so, yeah, it's about people, but you actually gain energy as you lead others. And so those are the aspects of DISC. So high I's probably have a really high trust of people. You love interaction with individuals, enthusiasm, being with people. And high D's, you're all about engaging with people, but through taking charge. You really want to take charge and lead others. So some areas of improvement for an extrovert would be in analytical problem solving. That might not be a strength of yours as an extrovert. So really knowing that, I'm going to have to lean into that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just might mean that it's not just a natural inclination for you. So analytical problem solving for extroverts could be a challenge. Also, even just being self-managing, time management could be a struggle sometimes for extroverts. Also, written communication. I know that's super hard for me. I'm an extrovert and my husband's been trying to get me to write a blog for years. So hence the podcast, because I was like, I can talk all day long, but if I have to write it down, it's really challenging for me. So realizing that as an extrovert doesn't mean I can't do it. I absolutely can, but I have to block out time and really focus and make an effort, where talking with my hands is very easy for me to do. So those are some areas and tips for improvement, okay? And if you're leading a team, realize that extroverts are typically doers, not planners, and that can drive your team crazy. So being aware of that, pausing, taking some time to do the planning before you jump out there and do something can make the team more comfortable in that regard. Okay, now that's extroversion. Let's talk about an introvert. An introvert is someone who gains energy from within. Time alone is actually how you recharge. It's not with people. It's not with more socializing. It's actually focusing on your internal world. It's actually being introspective. Having time alone. That's how you recharge. That's how you feel energized. That's how you really fill your cup. Okay. So Time alone doesn't mean that you don't like people. I just want to say that for introverts. Time alone has nothing to do with liking people. Sometimes that's a misconception that, oh, I'm not a people person. That's not true at all. Introverts absolutely love engaging with people, but there's limits. And that's very draining the more you have to do. So you need to have time alone so that you can recharge, so that you can be your best self when you are engaging with other people. Okay. And so introverts usually kind of maintain a steady level of energy and calmness unless they're pushed past their comfort zone. And then you can see kind of anxiety bubbling up with introverts more so than, say, an extrovert. Introverts are usually naturally more inquisitive and curious than extroverts. It's just a proven fact, okay? So let's look through the lens of DISC, because we talked about D's and I's being more of those extroverts. I would say specifically the compliant or the C style, that precise individual, is someone who would be more of an introvert. They like to control their environment. They like to be alone. And so that is how you absolutely recharge as an introvert. So some areas for improvement for introverts would be verbal communication. You may love written communication all day long, but for an introvert, verbal communication may be more of a struggle. Again, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means may require more effort, more energy on your part, more time alone to prepare to be able to do that presentation or to be able to do that public engagement. You can absolutely do it, but just being aware, oh, that's why it's easy for some people and harder for others. Now let's talk about the ambivert. So that's an individual who gains energy from a balance of both people and time alone. And so you actually can be an ambivert. It's a term. I've heard people say, well, I may be 40% extrovert, 60% introvert. Well, that is an ambivert. So it's all about balance. So ambiverts are most in their comfort zone when they're keeping the peace, when they're keeping balance. Okay. I'm going to use my notes because this is a very new term for me and it's really fascinating. I actually want to give you some questions for you to determine whether you are an ambivert. So ambiverts feel best when they're actually helping other people. And you can actually enjoy being and interacting with people, but you can actually enjoy just as much time as being by yourself. So it's a both and, not an either or. You enjoy time alone as well as socializing. You're typically pretty good at managing conflict. Your skills for negotiation are probably pretty good. And typically ambiverts are really great listeners and observers. And so if we're looking through the lens of DISC, ambiverts may tend to be more of that S or that steady style than more so than the D, I, or C that we've already talked about. So ambiverts, that steady style, and extremely sensitive. You're very emotionally in tuned to other people. And you really think about others more than you think about yourself. That's just natural for an ambivert. So here are some actual questions that I would love for you to think about to determine if you're an ambivert. So number one, I can perform I can perform tasks alone or in a group. I don't really care. It doesn't really bother me to either work alone or work with others. I don't really have a preference. If that's you, that's an ambivert. How about social settings don't make me uncomfortable, but I don't want to do too much of that. That's classic ambivert. How about being the center of attention doesn't bother me, but I don't want to stay there too long. Okay? Or an extrovert, it's like, I want to be the center of attention. An introvert, I don't want to be the center of attention. So you don't mind it, but if it lasts too long, that's bothersome. That means ambivert. Okay, I don't always need to be moving, but too much downtime makes me feel bored. If that's you, if that resonates, you're probably an ambivert. How about I can get lost in my own thoughts just as easily as I can lose myself in conversation. So you can go internal or you can just talk all day long with friends. If you can do both, that's ambivert. How about small talk doesn't make me uncomfortable, but it does get boring? Okay, so an extrovert loves a lot of small talk. Introverts want to go deep, don't really like small talk. It can get boring for an ambivert. They can do it, but it can get boring. How about when it comes to trusting other people, sometimes I'm skeptical, but then sometimes I'm not. Okay, if that's you, that is ambiversion. Okay, so I know for an extrovert, typically you're very trusting, introverts a little less trusting. And then lastly, if I spend too much time alone, I get bored. Yet too much time around other people leaves me feeling drained. So those are some questions just to think about to determine whether you're an extrovert, an introvert, or an ambivert. And again, we're all different. There's no best style. We can all lead from places of extroversion. We can lead from places of introversion, and we can lead as an ambivert. So I just encourage you to keep diving deep into that self-awareness piece. If we can help you in your journey to learn more about yourself, reach out to us. You can find the link in the bio to go to our website. You can fill out our contact form. You can join our newsletter. And if you haven't been watching us on YouTube, did you know that you can watch every one of our episodes? Just search Help for Leaders at YouTube and you can watch our episodes. Thank you so much for joining me this week. We're so glad to have you and hope you'll join us next week for another episode with Help for Leaders. Thank you for joining us today. You have the potential to communicate, engage, and lead with significant impact, and my goal is to help you do just that. Whether you're trying to get that next big promotion, scale your small business, or manage a team of thousands, there's always room for growth, and I can help you get there. Go to disc-report.com and find out what style of leader you are by downloading my free ebook on communication. Until next time, lead well and prosper.